Minnesota tonight. Tune in, Minnesota tonight. Minnesota tonight. Tune in, Minnesota tonight. Tune in, Minnesota. Tune in, Minnesota tonight. Tune in, Minnesota tonight. Tonight. Minnesota tonight. Tonight. Minnesota tonight. Minnesota tonight. Yeah. I'll probably take those. Yeah.
And tonight, we'll take 10 to talk about why you should attend the upcoming caucuses, a voting procedure named after a Jewish mother's most feared illness. Jonathan, don't you forget to wash your hands, otherwise you'll catch the caucus, you'll die, and then I'll never have grandchildren. Now, when it comes to presidential elections, Minnesota is only one of a handful of states that holds a caucus. Most other states hold primaries, which function a lot like the regular election. Voters enter private voting booths, check the box next to the name of the person that they least despise, and then take multiple car selfies while proudly displaying an "I voted" sticker like children fresh off a trip from the dentist. But a caucus, like the one we hold in Minnesota, is slightly more complicated than a primary for a couple of reasons. First, the way voters help choose the next possible commander-in-chief is not by filling out private ballots, but by placing handwritten votes into baskets, the same airtight system so successfully used in another American institution.
You are a disgusting, old, hot-headed, chauvinistic, alcoholic, bigot, and you need to grow up before you die alone.
Which Republican candidate is she talking about? Possibly most important difference about the caucus is that caucus voters can participate in something called a referendum, where citizens help revise party platforms. A platform is a carefully crafted set of half-truths about the party that are posted online for the nation to judge. Basically, it's a political party OkCupid profile, only with less photos from color runs. And these are used as a set of goals and guidelines for elected officials from each party to reference when governing. For example, the Minnesotan Republican Party's platform states, quote, that members of the Minnesota House and Senate should introduce and support legislation defining conception as when DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, of mankind is joined, also known as 24 hours after listening to any song by The Weeknd. Or take the Independence Party of Minnesota. Their platform is just a single sentence written in bold, in all caps, that says, Jesse Ventura, Minnesota governor for life, parentheses, explosion sounds. Now, precinct caucuses are the only times regular citizens have the opportunity to edit these documents that guide elected officials. For example, say you want politicians aligned with the DFL to criminalize Mounds bars, the Hawaiian nightmare treat that has ruined children's Halloween halls for generations. During the referendum, you can present the case against the chocolate disaster. Side note, chocolate disaster is actually the name of an all-girl Austrian jazz quartet, and in my opinion, the best all-girl Austrian jazz quartet in the whole game. I mean, they're way better than Coconut Nightmare. Now, if enough people agree with the referendum, it will be assigned to a delegate, and then they will go on to the state and national conventions where it will be considered. And then hopefully, as a party, we'll agree to stop shoving these disgusting coconut-laden abominations at children during Halloween. So if you want to get rid of Mounds bars or something else equally important, say like transgender rights or marijuana legalization or prison reform, you can caucus and speak about these issues, especially because none of those issues are currently addressed by the Minnesota DFL party platform. And while all 4 million Minnesota voters have only 2 parties that they really can choose from, very few people actually participate in caucuses. In 2012, less than 70,000 people voted in party caucuses across the state. That's less than 0.03% of the eligible voting population in the state.
Caucuses were really interesting. Hundreds of people.
Those few voters are the ones who choose the platforms that both parties run on during the elections, which is ridiculous. We shouldn't let very few people decide the priorities for the entire state. Low participation in caucuses is really weird when you consider how easy it is to participate. To successfully cauc the cauc, you first have to find your party's caucus precinct, which you can do so by visiting minnesotavotes.org. For example, if you're a Democrat in Ramsey County, you can meet at Highland Park Middle School. Or if you're a Republican in Anoka County, you can meet at Lexington City Hall. Or if you're a Libertarian in Big Lake, Minnesota, you can meet at Godfather's Pizza. Because nothing says democracy like a cheese bread shop named after a mob boss famously portrayed by a wheezing Marlon Brando. And even if you have no intention of revising your party's platforms, you should still caucus and submit your survivor-like vote of who you want to be your party's presidential nominee. Because this year, Minnesota's caucuses matter. This year, races are very close, and your vote can actually decide who gets the nomination for either the Democratic or Republican parties. For the Democrats, it could be email icon Hillary Clinton, or the Democratic Socialist dinosaur Bernie Sanders. And for the Republicans, it could be the Sears catalog become politician Marco Rubio, or Pinocchio's cousin Ted Cruz, or even Donald Trump, who will be the first president to install a tanning bed in the White House. For years, Minnesota's caucus was held in mid-February, and it was essentially the political equivalent of a child gift macaroni necklace. Definitely not important, but nice to have. But this year, for the first time ever, Minnesota will hold its caucus along with 11 other states on Super Tuesday. It's like Black Friday, but with worse deals. And that means candidates are actually going to start paying attention to us.
Minnesota is normally a bystander in the primary and caucus contest. But as WCCO's Esme Murphy reports, the state suddenly has the Democratic contenders' attention.
Oh my God, are they looking at us? Are they looking this way? Fix your hair, Minnesota, fix your hair! We finally matter. We made it, guys. We are finally a relevant part of the presidential nomination process. Man! Woo! I am amped. I am so amped that the only thing that can convey my amplitude is through this Minnesota tourism ad. Wait, was that a take? Why is there a take? Wait, are we finally invading Wisconsin? Woo! Let's go! Thank you. You can clap if you want for invasion of Wisconsin. And sure, maybe the candidates never liked us before the change, but if they start to pay attention to us now, they'll start to see that we've always cared. We're really all that.
Minnesota! Right?
That's right, Minnesota, we're Laney Boggs. We used to be clumsy and unnoticed, and now we're hot and awesome. Usher is our school DJ, and now we're gonna go vote. With the 90s rom-com reference that good, you have to vote. But seriously, you have no choice but to caucus, because 4 years ago, the Minnesota Tonight staff held a caucus, and now our party platform states that everyone who sees this show is required to go caucus. And now, if you don't like that a small group of people who don't represent you have limited your choices, that's exactly the point. So Minnesota, this caucus, let's bring the ruckus. And if we need a reminder of what the ruckus looks like, it looks a lot like this. That's our show. Good night. Stay nice, Minnesota.
Tune in tonight. Minnesota tonight. Minnesota tonight.
So we are here with the politics editor from NPR News, Mike Mulcahy. Thank you so much, Mike. Thanks for coming out. So welcome to your interview. That's the beginning part of Minnesota. Last part of interview. Excellent. So, yeah, a mananku is what we say in the studio. We're talking about caucuses here. And so we're finally on Super Tuesday, the first time Minnesota has ever been on Super Tuesday. But like we still have held caucuses for several years now. Has Minnesota like historically picked winners that who have nominees who have gone on to win the presidential nomination?
Yes and no, and a lot of it depends on the timing. Sometimes the caucuses come so late, everybody knows who the nominee is going to be, and people tend to go along with it. But actually, Minnesota has a reputation for not picking the winners.
Really?
4 years ago on the Republican side, remember the candidate was Mitt Romney?
Yeah.
Minnesota picked Rick Santorum.
Wow.
But then because of the way the caucuses worked, most of the delegates went to Ron Paul.
So most of the delegates from Minnesota went to Ron Paul,
Yes, almost all of them.
even though
Rick Santorum won the poll on the night of the caucuses. And in fact, because of that, the Republican National Committee said you have to change the rules. And now the vote on this caucus, on the Republican side, the delegates will be proportionally allocated.
Yeah, it seems like whenever Ron Paul does anything, they just change rules. Like, yeah, whatever just happened there, Ron, that can't happen again. So, well, that seems like an airtight system. I don't know why they would have wanted to change it. So Minnesota has held a caucus since 1999, right?
Before that.
Before that.
Minnesota has only had 4 presidential primaries
Oh,
in the
really?
history of the state. And really, the whole primary system didn't start until the early part of the 20th century. And so Minnesota had 4 primaries. I think it was 1916. They had 2 in the 50s, 52 and 56, and the last one was in 1992.
And so we just had a smattering of primaries and a couple of caucuses. Why was that?
Well, because at least in recent history, the 1992 one, that was because people were critical of the caucus as much as you have been tonight, saying that it doesn't bring out enough people, it doesn't make us a player in the process, we need to have a more representative vote, and that will get the candidates to pay attention to us, because Minnesota is always looking for attention. And,
No, us?
and so the legislature gave it a try in '92, and there was a lot of debate back then, as I recall, of primary versus caucus, and somehow that all died down, and now we're back to caucus.
Really? Even though, well, this year, because of the changes in the Republican rules, both the Republican and Democratic caucuses proportionally divide their delegates to the National Convention.
Right.
So, interesting. So, we kind of just have been like, we don't really have a reason why that we do this, but we still do it.
Well, the defense of the caucus is that it actually requires you to do something and sit with your neighbors and talk with them.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So why?
In the old days, before the internet,
What?
yeah,
Oh.
candidates couldn't raise a ton of money on the internet like Bernie Sanders has done this time. You know, he's got a bunch of small donors giving a little money on the internet. And so the caucus system could provide an advantage to a candidate who could organize his followers to actually go. And in fact, in 1990, that's how Paul Wellstone got the endorsement to become senator. He was able to organize his people to go to those caucuses and take over the delegates to the convention. So he eventually won. A couple of years ago, the Republicans did a similar thing 4 years ago. And all those Ron Paul delegates, they supported a guy named Kurt Bills to run for U.S. Senate against Amy Klobuchar. And he's a teacher from Rosemont. Never could have won an endorsement in a primary because nobody's heard of him. He didn't have a lot of money. Unfortunately for him, he went on to lose to Amy Klobuchar 60-30 in the general election. But that's a strength of the caucus system, though, that a candidate without much money, somebody who's not able to afford TV commercials
Can get nominated they can lose the election.
Well, except some people say that's good for democracy. If somebody without a lot of money can organize people to actually believe in what he says enough to get out on a Tuesday night in the middle of winter and sit around with their neighbors for 2 hours and talk.
Wow. Yeah, if someone could do that, they might as well win the election. And they've won something, that's for
Maybe.
sure. So, what you've covered politics for how many years?
A long time.
A long time. Minnesota, you talked about this before. Minnesota has one of the highest voter turnouts in the country. Why does Minnesota have a higher voter turnout than like any other state, especially like Wisconsin or Iowa or these other states?
Well, it's hard to say. Generally, a well-educated population. Generally, come from a tradition where it was important to participate in politics, and for a long time, Minnesota had native candidates on the ticket. Hubert Humphrey ran for president a couple times, was vice president. Walter Mondale was vice president, ran for president. Last time out, Tim Pawlenty and Michelle Bachmann ran for president. So I think that all adds into it.
Yeah, awesome. And so, obviously, Michelle Bachmann and Tim Pawlenty, even though they were from our hometown, did not become president. Thank God. What are your predictions for this new batch of crazy people? Not all from Minnesota.
Right.
Who do you see winning the nominations from different parties?
Well, I try not to predict because it's easier for me to cover the news than predict it because weird stuff happens regularly, right? Weird stuff.
Oh.
But, here we are sitting before the Minnesota caucuses. I mean, Donald Trump clearly has the lead on the Republican side. It looks like Hillary Clinton has the lead on the Democratic side, but, a lot of people have yet to vote and have to choose, so we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. But at the same time, I feel like even though we are experiencing in like Nevada and in the Iowa caucus, there were like record numbers of people who participated in those events. What would you say to someone who in Minnesota is not engaged in the political process?
Not interested?
Yeah.
Well, there's an old saying that the people who show up end up governing. And if you don't show up, you're not going to have a voice. There's a lot of arguments for a primary, too. The main argument is the polls are open all day. More people are willing to vote. It's easier because you can go any time of day. But the advantage of the caucus is you can have a direct say. And it's not just the presidential candidates who are interested in these caucuses, it's candidates for legislature. Every seat in the legislature is on the ballot this year. And so if you go to your caucuses, you can have an influence on who those candidates are and what those candidates will do once they get into office, because politicians, believe it or not, do owe the people who support them something, usually, or else the people will stop supporting them. So that's the argument for going, I guess.
Well, you've sold me. Everybody, Mike Mulcahy from NPR News.
Tonight, Minnesota tonight. Minnesota tonight. Yeah.
Everyone, LaQuess.
Woo!
If you knew where I've been, you wouldn't ask me where I'm going. You wouldn't wonder about where or why or how. You'd be happy that I'm back home. If you knew where I've been, you wouldn't ask me where I'm going. You wouldn't wonder about where or why or how. You'd be happy that I'm back home. Because I saw a man die today, and he did not deserve that. Nobody deserves that. Shot like a dog in the middle of the nighttime. I saw his mother cry out. I saw his father yell with so much grave and doubt. I saw his sister fall down on her knees praise and pray. I saw his brother get carried away. And now I'm here, and it's clear. If you knew where I've been, you wouldn't ask me where I'm going. You wouldn't wonder about where or why or how. You'd be happy that I'm back home. If you knew where I've been, you wouldn't ask me where I'm going. You wouldn't wonder about where or why or how. You'd be happy that I'm back home. 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 Standing here, standing here, standing here, still standing here with my people. I'm still standing here with my people. We ain't going nowhere. No, we ain't going nowhere. Tell everybody that I'm home.
Woo!
Lost and confused now. I don't know what to do now. I had everything right and now I'm here and I'm hoping for one more chance, one more dance. Hoping you can come through with one more romance. I think I should let you go before I lose where I had you last time. This is the last time, this is the last time, it's the last time, and I don't want to be that one who is the bad guy in the story. I don't want to be in the story at all. Now I think that you are too far gone. Wake me up, I don't belong here. This feels like a terrible nightmare. I thought things were going okay until you came through and ruined my day. Please don't go away. It feels like I'm fading away. Everything's dark everywhere I go and I don't know what to fucking do now. Everything's dark everywhere I go and I don't know what to fucking do now. Why would I go in the back when all of the girls are back there? Why would I do it back there? What the fucking why did I do it back there? But now I'm just trying to find out how I can get back in her good graces. I hope other people don't think this has something to do with racism. I just want to come through and be the person who can fix the mess I've made, the things I've done. Oh, this ain't fun no more. Wake me up, I don't belong here. This feels like a terrible nightmare. I thought things were going okay until you came through and ruined my day. Please don't go away. It feels like I'm fading away. I keep on fading. I keep on fading. I keep on fading. I keep on fading. I'm fading. Oh, I'm fading. I'm fading, fading. Oh, I'm fading away. Oh, I'm fading away. Oh, I keep on fading away. Keep on fading. Oh, I keep fading. I keep fading away. Woo!
Minnesota tonight. Tune in. Minnesota tonight. Minnesota tonight. Minnesota tonight. Tune in. Minnesota. Tune in. Minnesota tonight. Minnesota tonight. Tonight. Minnesota tonight. Minnesota tonight.